Welcome to Science by PK. Today we're tackling one of the strangest questions in space exploration. Why is Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun, so out of reach for humans? At first glance, you'd think it would be easier to travel to Mercury than to Mars. After all, it's smaller, closer, and it doesn't even have a thick atmosphere to worry about. But here's the twist. Mercury is one of the most difficult planets to visit. Stick around till the very end, because we're going to unravel not only Mercury's mysteries, but also why traveling to other planets isn't as simple as hopping into a rocket and blasting off. So let's start with Mercury. Why is it so hard to travel there? The first big challenge is gravity and speed. To reach Mercury, a spacecraft has to travel inward towards the sun. But as you get closer to the sun, its gravity pulls harder and harder. This means instead of just aiming at Mercury, you'll also have to slow yourself down dramatically. Otherwise, you might just get slingshot past and spiral into the sun. Think about it. Going to Mercury isn't like taking a shortcut across the solar system. It's like trying to run downhill while stopping yourself at the same time. The fuel costs are enormous. That's why only a handful of missions have ever made it to Mercury, like NASA's Messenger and ESA's BB Colombo. And for humans, it would be even worse. You'd need massive amounts of energy, shielding, and supply. The second big problem is the temperature extremes. On Mercury, daytime temperatures are around 430 Celsius, 800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt lead. But at night, with no atmosphere, it goes to negative 80 Celsius. Imagine standing on a planet where your spacecraft would be boiling hot on one side and frozen solid on the other. The technology to keep humans alive under those conditions don't exist. Finally, there's radiation. Mercury has almost no atmosphere, no magnetic field to protect against the sun's deadly radiation. On Earth, we're shielded by our magnetosphere and atmosphere. On Mercury, astronauts would be bombarded with solar particles powerful enough to fry electronics and damage DNA. So, to sum up, Mercury is the neighbor that looks close by the path. To get there, it's a steep cliff covered in lava and ice, with a spotlight of deadly radiation shining down on you. Now, here's the fun twist. Mercury isn't even the closest planet to Earth most of the time. That honor goes to Venus. At its closest approach, Venus is only about 25 million miles away, while Mars is about 34 million miles away at its nearest. So why aren't we aiming for Venus instead of Mars? Well, Venus is basically hell in the sky. Its thick atmosphere is made of carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid. Pressure that at the surface is 90 times greater than Earth's, the same being nearly a kilometer underwater. That pressure would crush a submarine, let alone a spacesuit. And the temperature about 465 Celsius. Everywhere, day and night, pole to pole. That's hotter than Mercury, even though Venus is farther from the sun. Why? Because Venus has a runaway greenhouse effect that traps heat. On top of that, the atmosphere is so thick that wind blows a hurricane speeds constantly. And sure, Venus is closer, but it's a death trap. The Soviets tried sending landers there in 1970s and the 80s, and the longest one survived was only about 2 hours before being crushed and cooked. So if Venus and Mercury are so dangerous, what about Mars? At its closest, Mars is about 34 million miles away, farther than Venus, but still within reach. Mars has challenges too: thin atmosphere, cold temperatures, and dangerous radiation. Compared to Venus or Mercury, Mars is a paradise. It has day length similar to Earth's, frozen water at the poles, and just enough atmosphere to protect against some radiation and allow for weather. That's why NASA, SpaceX, and many space agencies are focusing on Mars. It's not that easy. It's just that it's the least impossible option. Let's break it down by distance. Earth's nearest neighbors are Venus, which is 25 million miles at the closest approach, Mars at 34 million miles at the closest approach, and Mercury about 48 million miles at its closest. So technically Venus is the closest, but the distance isn't the only thing that matters. It's the environmental hazards. Venus, too hot, too pressurized, acid atmosphere. Mercury, extreme temperatures, deadly radiation with fuel costs. Mars, cold, thin atmosphere, but survivable with the technology. That's why the dream of colonization always circles back to Mars. And what about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune? Well, they are gas giants, no solid surface to land on, plus they're hundreds of millions to billions of miles away. The distance are staggering. Jupiter, which is 365 million miles at the closest, Saturn at 746 million miles, Neptune 2.7 billion miles. For now, they're far beyond human human reach. So why not? Returning to our crazy question, why can't humans travel to Mercury? It's a combination of three things: fuel and speed. It's much harder to slow down enough to stay in orbit near Mercury. 2, environment. The extreme heat and cold, both lethal to spacecraft and human. 3, radiation. No atmosphere or magnetosphere, which means no protection from the sun. It's a nightmare scenario for human survival. So next time you look up at the night sky and see Mercury shining in the near horizon, remember, it may look close, but it's one of the most unreachable places for humans. Sometimes the hardest journeys aren't the longest. They're the ones filled with obstacles we can't yet overcome. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one.